And today we've got another great episode for you guys and another great guest. But before we get into our guest, we have our latest news reports. So for today, for all my Texans, we have Governor Greg Abbott has now ordered all Texans over the age of 10 to wear a face covering over their nose and mouth in counties with 20 or more COVID cases. Also, people cannot be in groups larger than 10 and must maintain social distancing. So we are based in Texas, and we want all our Texans to be safe, wear a mask. And now it's in order, so but we just want all you guys to be safe and, maintain social distancing so we could, get through this time together. Another report we had last night from Brad Stevens, if or someone could bring up the report. We had AB Antonio Brown from the NFL was rumored to go to the Houston Texans. They're in talks as a possible landing spot. No deals on the table yet, but Houston is in the talks to get Antonio Brown. And not only are Texans in the talks, but Seahawks have also been rumored to be interested in Antonio Brown. Now, both teams could really benefit from this. If the Texans do end up getting Antonio Brown, this could open up a trade for Jet star safety Jamal Adams. If you get Antonio Brown, they already have Brandon Cooks. They already have Randall Cobb. They already got Kenny Stills. They already have Will Fuller. One man is going to be left out, and whoever's left out could be put in a trade package to get Jamal Adams, which will be interesting to see. As for the Seahawks, they already have, two great receivers in Tyler Lockett, a young and upcoming receiver in DJ Metcalf. So if they get Antonio Brown, that just adds more weapons to the team, and there'll be an offense that, if they get Antonio Brown, it'll be hard to stop. What do you think, Ersan?
Yeah, no, definitely. Me personally, being a Texans fan, I think this is going to be a really cool thing if the Texans can land Antonio Brown, and I'm sure Bill O'Brien's going to be trying his best to kind of get that in the talks. And we've heard that Antonio Brown has thrown the football around with Deshaun Watson, so I think it'll be a really cool thing to kind of see him in Houston, and I'm really excited to see what happens with that whole situation.
Yeah, sounds good. Another report we had earlier this morning was actually from Adam Schefter that the Washington Redskins name change is very likely. There's been a lot of controversy behind the Washington Redskins name and with the culture behind the name. So we finally get a report from Schefter that the name change is likely. So that's up and coming. And also earlier this week, the new NBA 2K21 covers were released with Damian Lillard being on the cover of the first current gen, and then we had Kobe Bryant on the Legend Edition of both the current gen and the next gen, and we had Zion Williamson being on the regular cover of the next gen. So, Ursan, how do you feel about that? How do you feel about 2K getting Kobe on the cover?
I think that's a great move. Kobe's been a legend, so I think it's only right that he's going to be on the Legend Edition of NBA 2K21. So I'm really excited to see what 2K comes out with in terms of the gameplay as well as some of the different modes that they were talking about including. So I'm really excited to see what 2K is going to come up with, and I really like how they did this whole deal where on the current generation, if you buy the Mamba Forever Edition, you get the standard edition on PS5 for free. And vice versa, if you buy the Legend Edition on the PlayStation 5, you get the PlayStation 4 standard edition for free. So it's a really cool marketing technique from 2K that we really don't see too often. But Kobe Bryant being on the main cover on the Legend Edition, I think it's a great move. And it's a really good tribute. So I'm really hoping that they have something inside the game that can kind of pay tribute to Kobe Bryant. So I'm really excited to see what that's going to be all about.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on this one. Kobe Bryant, I guess, putting him on the cover, it shows, how great his legacy was that he put on to the world and to the NBA. It kind of, we have the younger generation playing games like this, and I guess it reminds them, how big and how influential Kobe was to the game of basketball. Now we are on to our main show. We're past the reports. We have our guest coming up. He is the NBA writer for Action Network. His name is Matt Moore. Please welcome Matt Moore to the stream. How you doing, Matt?
Good. How are y'all?
We're good, thank you for asking. So would you like to introduce yourself? Kind of let us to get to know you.
Sure. I'm Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network. I've been covering the NBA professionally in some capacity for full-time for 10 years and at least in some professional capacity for 12. I started out in 2007. I started a blog back when those were a thing called Hardwood Paroxysm because I needed somewhere that I could put my thoughts on the NBA, and it was a really exciting time with the Suns and the Mavericks and the Spurs and all those teams, as well as like the Heat. And so I started a blog with a buddy, and I got linked by True Hoop one day back before it was even with ESPN. And that was a big deal. And then I started making friends inside of that world and joined AOL Fan House. I later wrote for NBC on their pro basketball talk page as their weekend editor. And then in July of 2010, about 4 days before the decision, I joined CBS Sports full time. I worked at CBSSports.com as an NBA writer from 2010 until 2018, at which point I joined Action Network, a new site that focuses on gambling and those kind of things. But mostly I just do my usual NBA analysis, and I'm glad to be on the show.
Well, we love having you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for agreeing to be on the show. I know you probably have a tight schedule, and we really appreciate you coming on. So first, I'd like to go into the first question.
Cool, yeah. So, I mean, something that's kind of been on everyone's mind has been COVID-19 and how that's going to be affecting the NBA restart. So I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that, and how do you feel that, with the rise in COVID cases amongst NBA players, Woj tweeted out that there were 9 players that got tested positive right before the start. So what are your thoughts on that, and what do you see happening with the NBA restart?
So one of the things that's not really being talked about that needs to probably be addressed is the rate of positivity differential between the players and staff. So 884 staff members were tested, and the return rate on that was 1.1%. On the players so far, it's been 7.7%. That's a high rate for the rate of infection of this. And like, that's indicative that honestly, the players have not taken this seriously enough, which if we look at the national trends and we look at all the information being presented, one of the things being talked about a lot is that young people, because in part they're not as susceptible, though there are definitely anecdotal cases throughout the country. Every day you're reading about a new young person suffering from severe health impacts from COVID-19. Young people tend to be a little bit more reckless just in general, but particularly with this disease. They're going out more. They're still going to bars. They're going to beaches and those kind of things. And most of the players fit that category. They're young millionaires. And so their behavioral patterns are very different from, from older folks. Like, I don't think Chris Paul is going out and hanging out. Like, I don't think Chris Paul is going out and going to various events. And we see videos that are popping up on the internet of players at open runs with people that you do not recognize, and that's fine. That they get to make these decisions. But when you see those as well as other videos of them out partying, then there is, along with those positive tests, you have to be like, this is not being taken seriously enough. Now, most of these cases have been asymptomatic, which is great news. That's good. And it's better to find out now than when they get into the bubble in Orlando. Like, that's one of the reasons the league is doing all this, is to make sure that anybody that goes into the bubble is free and clear. But there's going to have to be a little bit more discipline on the part of everyone in terms of following social distancing. And like, it's not just like, partying or just the open runs of playing basketball. They could have picked it up anywhere. They could have been responsible and still tested positive. And I think a lot of players are being responsible, and some probably were responsible and tested positive. But it just shows you, like, look, if you're going to pull this off and you want the money, which everyone does, you're going to have to be really strict and extremely disciplined with your approach just to be able to get into the bubble for any of this to work.
100%. And I agree, we're definitely going to be seeing that age difference in terms of, the younger players not being as careful. And hopefully they are going to be careful in terms of, making sure that they're all right coming into Orlando. But the other question I wanted to ask you is, do you feel like there might be a stoppage in play in between, whenever they start playing in Orlando and they start seeing some cases. Hopefully not happens, but, in case that does happen, do you see a stoppage in play midseason right in between the restart?
So I think I don't think it's likely for there to be a stoppage before games start. And the reason is they have built in this time, right? So like if you test positive right before they leave for Orlando next week, and you're delayed, everybody else goes and you're delayed, and then you get in and you've been cleared for 14 days and you've tested negative twice. If you land and you're tested negative, when everybody lands in Orlando, there is a 48-hour period where after they land, their test results come back. So they're quarantined. Everybody's quarantined for 48 hours after they land in Orlando while the tests clear. If you test positive, then it would take something like over half the league to stop everything then, because you would just be able to be like, well, that team's staying in the room, that team's staying in the room, that team's staying in the room, while everybody else kind of goes about the process of getting back. Like, this can set you behind, but that's just kind of how it goes. Now, once play starts, that's where it starts to get more complicated. I will say that there's been a lot of questions about what would it take for there to be a stoppage of play. It's not going to be, everyone's like, well, what if LeBron gets it? I'm like, if LeBron gets it, it's like LeBron hurt his ankle. Like that for the integrity of the game purposes, that's the similarity. Like, his own health condition is its own story because this is a terrifying disease. But as far as the game integrity, the games are going to continue. If it's LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, Giannis, whoever, those games are going to continue. But if there's a breakout where it's like, look, a team only has 4 players healthy, like 8, of the 17 players, 13 tested positive. Now you have a real problem. Like, now you might be a situation where the league is going to have to consider it. But if it's just one team, that's going to make it hard. But if you have multiple teams where it's like half of the rosters are gone, then the league is going to have to look at a suspension. I haven't confirmed this. I suspect that the league has probably built in a period of time for them to be able to suffer a suspension once games start and still be able to finish within a reasonable time frame of their projected schedule.
Yeah, no, 100%. I definitely agree with that. And I'm personally hoping, as a basketball fan, that it doesn't suspend, but obviously that's keeping in mind everyone's health, and hopefully we can see some great basketball coming up. Amsel, you want to take it over?
Yeah, so definitely makes sense. If COVID cases keep piling up, in the league, and people do say that Orlando, the NBA bubble, I've seen on First Take, people have said that it's the safest place to be. Some say because of how careful the NBA is going to be with how who can enter, and you have to be fully cleared up, and not. There's obviously there's a month probation for any family members to even come in. So people do say it's the safest place to be at. So we'll see how that turns out. So with that being said, let's say the NBA season does start. Everything goes as planned. Obviously, there's 22 teams showing up to the league or to Orlando, and there are multiple teams fighting for the 8th seed in the West and in the East. So on the West side, who do you think is going to get that 8th spot to enter the playoffs?
So the Grizzlies are almost definitely going to wind up in the play-in. Like, if you just look at the schedule and you look at their position, there's no chance that they fall so far behind that they're completely out of it. So the Grizzlies are going to be in the play-in. The Pelicans, obviously, I think everyone kind of points as like the favorite because they've got a favorable schedule. Zion Williamson, they were a beast once Zion joined the team. They're getting everybody back healthy, which was a problem for them throughout the year. They'll have Derek Favors. They'll have Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball and Drew Holiday, and all of those things suggest that they're likely to be a real force in terms of this tournament. I do think some of the other teams are going to have a chance to spoil this, though. I think if you look at the Spurs, they're a team that everyone's counted out because of LaMarcus Aldridge's absence, but there's a lot of reasons to suspect that they're still going to have a good chance, in part because of how their offense changes to a more modern approach when Aldridge is out. They shoot more three-pointers, they play at a faster rate, they're more efficient, and defensively, weirdly enough, they actually get quite a bit better when Aldridge has not been on the floor this season. I think the Kings, if you look at they're another team that's a little bit under the radar, but like De'Aaron Fox, they're getting Marvin Bagley back, as according to what the team said yesterday. There's real talent there. And then the Blazers, like Dame is Dame, and Dame is able to carry that team. The Blazers have a lot of confidence that getting Zach Collins and Yusuf Nurkic back makes them an entirely different team. I'm not convinced. I still think that their underpinnings are pretty compromised defensively. But look, these are all really dangerous teams. If I had to pick one, I'm probably going with the Pelicans. My second is probably going to be the Grizzlies, but I think a lot of these teams have a real chance of sneaking in there and stealing the 8.
Yeah, I mean, I agree, but my personal pick, I think that, the team that will come on top, I feel like, is the Grizzlies, because I don't see their play style is, they play through John Morant, and he's been excellent throughout the entire season. And they have a 3-game lead. So I don't really see any team kind of, I mean, it would take the Grizzlies to lose, probably go negative for them to really not make the playoffs, and the teams below them, like we have the Blazers, who are the closest to them, 3 games back. They would have to go at least, I'd say, 6-2 to even keep up, in my opinion. And I feel like the Grizzlies are going to be able to win at least 4 games just based on who they would be playing. So any thoughts on that, Ersan? You got a pick or anything?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for me personally, I would really love to see the Blazers take that 8th spot. With Yusuf Nurkic coming back, and hopefully we get to see Dame and CJ McCollum in that backcourt. So my personal favorite that I'm really hoping to see is definitely going to be Blazers taking that 8th spot. Matt, I think you were wanting to say something before.
Yeah, I was going to say, even if the Grizzlies are able to hold on to the 8, there is going to be that play-in spot for any team that's within 4 games. And I think one of the dangers is the Grizzlies went 0-2 versus the Pelicans in regular season play. There's a real matchup problem there. And everyone's like, yeah, but you have to beat them twice. I'm like, I think the Pelicans can beat them twice. I just don't think that especially without home court advantage, you're just not as safe in this environment on a lot of levels, but in that capacity for holding on to the 8. So like Memphis definitely has an advantage. Like I said, they're going to be at least in the play-in, but this is going to be, they're going to have to earn getting that 8 seed.
You're right. I totally agree with that. Pelicans are going to be a scary matchup, especially with Zion. I'm pretty sure the Blazers, they're gonna need some tough wing defenders to hold down Zion, and I don't see a lot of wing defenders on the team that can really do that. I don't even see a lot of players in the NBA that can really hold down Zion in general. Right. So yeah, that'd be tough. And we saw a lot of signings from different teams. We saw the Lakers sign J.R. Smith, and we had someone in the comments talking about Luc Mbah A Moute, that the Rockets picked him up, another wing defender. So which signing do you think was better? The Rockets being able to sign Luc Mbah A Moute, or the Lakers being able to replace Avery Bradley with J.R. Smith?
I'll go with Luc Mbah A Moute, and he's a guy that I think goes under the radar. His shoulder injury in 2018 was devastating for Houston, and really it didn't decide that series. Chris Paul's injury did, but they probably would have won earlier in that series if Mbah A Moute had played. He was so pivotal for what they did. Now, it's been 2 years since then, and Mbah A Moute is older, and he's always been an injury risk, but he just brings a lot to the table. He does have a 3-point shot that comes and goes, being able to hit from the corner. It gives them another wing option. They have so much versatility to start with. I think that's really helpful versus JR. Like, look, it's been like 18 months since JR played basketball. Like, it's been a long time since JR has been on the court regularly in rotation. And I just don't know what he really has at this point. Like in 2016, he gave one of the best, really overall performances for a role player you're going to see for a championship team. He was great defensively. He did all the JR stuff in terms of getting hot, but then he started suffering injuries after that and was never really the same. And defensively, that's the Lakers' identity, is defense. One of the reasons that they wanted Avery Bradley was they wanted to build this team that was just great defensively. Now, JR is going to get minutes because LeBron has his back, but I do worry a little bit about JR's ability to hang defensively, especially within the scheme of how the Lakers play defense. He gambles a little bit too much. Sometimes he's a little bit more over aggressive. And the Lakers don't really play that style much. So I'm not exactly sure that that's going to be the big impact that they want. I mean, honestly, like one of Dion Waiters or J.R. Smith will probably impact the playoffs, but I don't think both of them will.
I totally agree with that because, I mean, in the playoffs, it is possible that the Lakers and Rockets can meet. And let's say that does happen. Like you said, the Lakers' identity is really on defense. That's why they had Avery Bradley. So losing Avery Bradley and, adding J.R. Smith, who hasn't played, obviously, in 18 months, having the guard duo of Dion Waiters and J.R. Smith, having the guard James Harden and Russell Westbrook, that's a really big matchup nightmare for the Lakers. It's gonna be tough to hold on to. I mean, they do have the advantage with AD and LeBron if you're talking about wings, but the Rockets have a lot of bodies that they could throw at both of them. So and obviously the Lakers with JaVale McGee there, Dwight Howard looks like there was reports that he won't be playing, but the Lakers have a lot of big men, and that's what really gave them an advantage in the regular season because they were out rebounding teams. They were just a defensive monster in the paint, with all these big men. So we'll see how that plays out. If there's someone to chime in on that or anything.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the Rockets addition with Luc Mbah A Moute, I definitely agree with Matt, and I think that's the better pickup here. In terms of defense, I think he's going to be a really good addition, assuming that he stays healthy. I think that Rockets can have a really good chance in the playoffs, and I think they can make a pretty good run, assuming that Rockets can hit their threes and they don't have that drought like they did last time in the playoffs. So definitely assuming, all things go well, I'm really excited to see what the Rockets can come up with. And obviously I'm not going to knock out the Lakers. I think the Lakers have a really good chance of hopefully making it to the finals this year. But I definitely wouldn't underestimate the potential of Houston as well as all the other teams that are going to be coming back and playing in the restart.
Totally agree. With that being said, every team is trying their best to kind of surround their stars that are in the playoffs with some good talent. Adding Luc Mbah A Moute to the Rockets, adds a defensive versatility. Adding J.R. Smith, it's kind of a replacement for Avery Bradley to kind of keep up with all these players opting out for the Lakers. But overall, throughout the league, a lot of teams, a lot of players have pressure. But which player do you think has the most pressure to win this season?
Probably Giannis. He won MVP, and they were supposed to win last year. A lot of it's just when you're that dominant in the regular season, there's an expectation for you to back it up. Otherwise, you become known as like just this regular season team. And I think that the Bucks are probably under the most pressure to win to keep Giannis. But I also think Giannis is under a lot of pressure to try and secure that title. Even though he's so young, I think there's a lot of pressure to make good on, okay, you can beat up on teams in the regular season, but what can you do, in the playoffs? Kawhi Leonard's kind of validated already, but he also put himself on the line by joining the Clippers, left a championship organization, the Raptors, joined up in LA, and they're trying to take on the Lakers and trying to dethrone LA from being the LA signature team. The Lakers will always be more popular, but it does say something if you can go in there and actually win the title and be the top team. Paul George is another one. George is really great in the mid-2000s. Everyone forgets this with the Pacers. He was a guy that consistently came through for them. But since then, it's been rough. And he's developed this reputation as a guy that's choked in the playoffs the last couple of years. And that's not really fair or accurate given a lot of the circumstances he's been under. But I think he's under some pressure in this one. LeBron's always chasing greatness, so I'm not really worried about that one. But Davis, on the other hand, I think Anthony Davis is under quite a bit of pressure. He forced his way out of New Orleans in a messy ordeal. He goes to the Lakers, and they're trying to reclaim their supposedly rightful place at the top of the NBA food chain. And it's always tough being the number 2 to LeBron. That's just always a tough position. And a lot of guys have struggled trying to live up to that. So watching how he does, where there are some holes in AD's game. He's a great player. He's a phenomenal player. He's a top 10 talent, but there are some weaknesses there that teams can exploit, and how he handles it when when he goes deep in a playoff run will be really interesting to see, especially when he's the favorite.
Definitely. Some players that came into my mind were, I did have Giannis on in some names. I just thought about Giannis straight up because, he does he's looks like going to be a back-to-back MVP. I mean, it does certainly look like that. I mean, he was the MVP last season, and he's definitely in the top 2 voting this year. And he's been really dominating the regular season, but we saw last season, teams were able to kind of stop him in the playoffs and kind of scheme their way. I know you had an article about, Lamar Jackson and Giannis, how they're both different, players that teams have to scheme against to kind of stop him. And if Giannis can't find a way to, get past these schemes, he's just going to be known as that one guy that is great in the regular season. Same thing with James Harden. I know Harden's been through some different circumstances, though. He has to play Golden State in the West, and obviously it hasn't been an easy road for him. But he goes from averaging, he plays at a really high level, but the thing is he hasn't been able to get past to what their goal is. They want to get to the NBA Finals and still haven't been able to do that. And if you look at the stats, he's still really dominant in the playoffs. It's just when you look back on his career, you're gonna see a guy that was a really good player with great stats, but just wasn't able to get it done. And I think it's really important for him to kind of win it this year. And obviously, you have LeBron James chasing greatness, trying to catch up to MJ. Obviously, he's under some pressure to win this year because he's got AD, and of course, AD is also under pressure because AD, he's been with the Pelicans for a long time. Hasn't really done much in the playoffs. But, now he's got LeBron on his team, and if he's not able to win now, people are going to look at him and be like, is he really one of the top players in the league if he can't get the job done? That's kind of my take on the people with the most pressure. What about you, Ersan? What do you think?
So, no, I definitely agree with mostly all the players that you guys said. But I guess I had one sleeper pick. I don't know, obviously we don't know what that's going to be looking like for this season. But I wanted to know what y'all's thought were on Kevin Durant. Obviously he's injured and there's been some talks about, Kevin Durant possibly might be playing in this coming restart. So I wanted to see what are y'all thoughts on Kevin Durant? If he does decide to come back with Brooklyn, how are they going to be playing a factor in this NBA?
He confirmed Mark Spears that he's going to be out. He's not joining them in Orlando. He'll be out for the Brooklyn game. So I don't think he's going to come back next year. Be back to himself. Well, close to it. It's hard to come back after an Achilles. But he'll be back next season and we'll know where he's at.
With Kevin Durant, the hope is that he can come back to his MVP self. An Achilles injury isn't anything, small. We've had a lot of players in the past suffer Achilles injuries and they don't come back to be themselves. But I think with KD's skill set, he should be, he should be able to score at the same level. I mean, he's just he's a freakish player. I think he's just different. I don't think the injury will affect him like it did to others in the past. Another name that kind of comes up with Achilles injuries is Dominique Wilkins. He had an Achilles injury back when he was playing, but he was able to play through it at an all-star level, and that's what I think KD will be at. I think he can still play at a superstar level, but only time will tell. So we had another question in the comments from Naz. Who do y'all think has the best / easiest path to win in terms of schedule coming into the Orlando League?
Yeah, so if you look at it by just like winning percentage, the Pelicans have one of the easiest. The Sixers have the second easiest. The problem with that is that the Sixers were terrible on the road this season, and there's no home court advantage. So that's been the question with them. But the Sixers are definitely kind of in a position to make some noise if they get everybody back healthy and they solve a whole host of issues with their offense. That's still a really dominant defensive team. So there's a real upside, I think, for them. The Pelicans have the easiest. But part of it, though, is just that we don't know who's going to be in, who's going to be out. We don't know who's going to be going all out in these playoffs. We don't know, or in these 8 games. We don't know how the environment's going to affect them. There's so much that we don't know. we're going to have to kind of treat this as a blank slate, because trying to project a lot of this is based on assumptions that just don't hold up once we start factoring in the circumstances of this restart.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with you on that. And speaking of, all these factors coming into the restart, my question to you would be, how do you think the play is going to be in terms of, these players coming back after 4 or 5 months of not playing basketball? Obviously, they're having some couple of runs here and there, but in terms of an entertainment perspective and a professional perspective, how do you think that play is going to be? What are we going to be seeing in this coming restart?
It's going to be ugly. It's going to be really, really bad basketball. Every GM I've spoken with since the suspension has said that to me. They're just like, I'm really worried the product's going to be terrible. I'm really worried about it, because you can't duplicate game conditions in practice and scrimmage in any of this. A lot of these guys, even though they're in condition, they're in good shape, they're not in game shape, and that impacts things. And all the teams are out of rhythm. They've forgotten all the habits that they were in, back in March. And then on top of it, one thing that some executives have told me is they've said, look, some of my guys are not practice players. Like, they're just bad in practice because there's no energy. They feed off the crowd. Without it, I don't know what kind of effort we're going to get out of them. I don't know what, just their simple ability to perform. They get a rise, and some guys get a rise out of away crowds. They do really well being the villain. You can't feel either way. You're not rising to adversity here, and you're not being backed by your great home crowd. It's neither. And so there's a lot of concerns for what the basketball is going to be like. Now, everyone's going to watch. The ratings will be excellent. And it'll be great to have sports back because we've missed it, provided they can pull this off and pull it off safely. But, the reality is that by our normal standards, this is going to be a pretty rough product from the NBA.
Yeah,
totally agree. We have, so like you said, I feel like there's going to be some sloppy play going on in the league when it comes back, because, a lot of these players, with no fans, they feed off the energy, especially a guy like Russell Westbrook, he kind of feeds off the crowd's energy and kind of puts in more effort as he gets more hype during the game. Another thing that I wanted to ask, so, it's been a long time since we've seen the last game in the NBA. I think it was March was the last game. It's been a few months, but a lot of these teams, they haven't played like a scrimmage together in a while, because, facilities have been closed down. I heard that the Nuggets facility has been closed down because of COVID cases. So, a lot of these players haven't been able to play together. But some say, for example, the Rockets, they have a kind of a system where it's kind of like pickup basketball, where they got 5 shooters out, one person isoing the ball and kicking out the shooters or driving in. So, with that being said, some say their system will be fine. So, who do you think benefited the most from this hiatus? My personal pick would be the Rockets, just because I feel like they gave PJ Tucker some time to, he's after this was a small ball. He had to deal with a lot of big men, and he obviously it probably put a toll on his body. And having all this time off, it would be easy for, or it would be kind of a refresher for him to kind of get back in with a fresh body, and he's gonna be having to guard a lot of big men. So having a fresh body and kind of guarding him in the post, it'd be better for him. And having this type of pickup basketball style with the Rockets team, I think would be easier to kind of adjust to in Orlando. So I just wanted your thoughts on who would you think benefited the most from the hiatus?
So, I think the Rockets are one just because playing small ball is an exhausting style. And that was one of the things that we kind of saw with that in the beginning when they first started employing it, it was working great. And then over time, they ran out of energy. I think Harden pushes himself so hard for MVP every year that he does run out of a little bit of energy and endurance as the playoffs go on. And so getting this fresh start, especially with what kind of condition he looks in, I think that's going to be great for him. I think they'll probably be able to find a way to mesh the Harden-centric ball that they played early in the season and for the last couple of years with the Westbrook-centric ball that they were playing late, and try and find the nexus between those two. So I think that's good. The Sixers getting Ben Simmons back is a huge deal. He was really banged up, and getting him back 100%, depending on how Joel Embiid looks, when he gets back into camp. I think that's another team that really stands to benefit from this. Overall, I think teams that can play a read and react style will do better. I think there are actually teams that, because they'll have to simplify things, it'll actually do good things for their offense. I think the Celtics fall in that category. I think the Nuggets fall in that category. You want things with a little bit less structure, so you're not so dependent on precision. And those kind of teams, I think, will probably benefit from this. But the Rockets and Sixers, just because of the health aspect, no question that they come into this with the most improved chances relative to what would have happened if none of this had occurred.
So, definitely agree with that. The Sixers are a team that they were banged up in the regular season. We saw Ben Simmons go through some injuries, and Embiid was also hurt a little bit during the season. Another team that kind of comes to mind to me is the Celtics. They seem to I feel like their play style is kind of, similar, where they have Tatum. Tatum is put into a lot of ISO situations, and having players like Jaylen Brown and Marcus Smart on the defensive end being able to get some rest, and because they put a lot of energy onto on the defensive end, so players like that getting rest and coming back recharged, fully ready, is going to help out a lot for them in the playoffs.
Yeah, 100%. So I guess kind of to transition off of that, what are your personal picks? Who do you think is going to be making it to the NBA Finals? And, who do you think, given, the environment that they're going to be playing in? I just wanted to kind of, see where your head's at and your kind of get your predictions as to who do you think is going to be in the finals coming out of the East and the West.
I think there's a lot of instability here, and I tend to think of it more in probability standpoints. Like, I think the best probability is Bucks over Lakers. I'm not as high on the Clippers as some people are. I think the Rockets if the Rockets wind up in the 4 spot, I think they'll give the Lakers a strong push in the second round. I think they'll push them to 6 or 7. But I think eventually the Rockets will unfortunately suffer what kind of always befalls them, which is a cold snap right at the worst time. And when you're that dependent, it's just hard to be a team that's so consistent and has such a high floor as the Lakers. I think that there's a pretty good chance actually that the Nuggets upset the Clippers in round 2. And if that were to happen, I think that the Lakers absolutely stomp the Nuggets and advance to the finals. Look, I think in the East, it's a lot more wide open. I think that the Bucks are a team that because they give up so many 3-pointers and they give up one of the highest rates in the league, they are very susceptible to hot shooting. So the Celtics and the Heat are 2 teams that I really look at as having a good chance. If the Sixers stay in 6 and the Celtics stay in 3, I think the Sixers probably beat the Celtics. And then Toronto, that's just going to be a real bloody battle. The Heat are one I would be concerned about if I was Milwaukee. They beat them twice in the regular season. They have excellent shooting. The Bucks' entire scheme is dropping Brook Lopez or Robin Lopez back in their defensive schemes. And that really hurts when you're playing specifically the Heat, because they run a lot of guards behind screens and on handoffs for 3-pointers deep versus that drop coverage. And that just opens up a lot of opportunities for them. So the Heat are a team that I think could upset the Bucks. I think the Celtics have the same kind of chance. But if I got to go probability, like the head says, the Bucks are the best team. They've been the best team all year. They have Giannis. They have shooters. They're a great defense. They should win, but they should have won last year and they didn't. I'll take Bucks over Lakers, but I don't feel good about it.
So personally, I like your picks. It does seem like logically that could happen. Lakers and Bucks winning it all. Personally, I feel like losing Avery Bradley is huge for the Lakers. I feel like that's going to hurt them a lot, especially if they meet with the Rockets in the second round, and that's if the Rockets get past the first round. But just in terms of scenario, if they do meet the Rockets and if the Rockets get the 4th seed and they meet the Lakers in the second round, losing Avery Bradley, losing I think Dwight Howard, losing these players is really big because like you said, the Lakers are a defensive team, and these are 2 key defensive players that the Lakers are losing here. So in Avery Bradley, replacing Avery Bradley with J.R. Smith, I don't think Smith will be able to keep up with Harden, and And you did say something. You did say that there could be a cold drought for the Rockets. Coming at the worst time. But I feel like with Russell Westbrook on the team now, him shooting a really high percentage in the paint, being able to drive in and kind of change the pace. They play at a really high pace because of Russ. I just feel like the Lakers will not be able to keep up with that, especially with Avery Bradley gone. And and even when they're missing 3-pointers, I feel like Russ can counter that with driving into the basket. And being, we saw in the regular season when they switched to small ball, Russ was playing one of probably his best basketball of his career. Shooting at a really efficient rate. So I feel like my pick to go to the finals would be the Rockets, just because of the break they had, and the Lakers losing some key defenders, and in the Clippers. I feel like if the Rockets meet them in the conference finals, I feel like we saw in the regular season they kind of split some games in the regular season, and Harden did have some pretty good games against Paul George, and I feel like the thing about Paul George, I don't think Paul George and Patrick Beverley got in foul trouble against the Rockets a lot this season, and looking at the way that Pat Bev plays defense against the Rockets, I feel like that will be, kind of. It'll be kind of hard to overcome if you lose Patrick Beverley to foul trouble, and it happens a lot. And I've seen it happen a lot against the Rockets with Patrick Beverley. So I feel like the Rockets will make the finals out the West, and from the East, I think the Celtics are a team to watch, and I feel like they can take down if Tatum is able to play as he was before the league stopped and suspended. If he's able to keep up that play, I think they'll make it out the East. So I got Rockets and Celtics in the finals, and I got Rockets taking it home.
Something to keep in mind when you look at Bradley is the Lakers do have Kentavious Caldwell Pope. They do have Alex Caruso, so they can play KCP down at the 3 if necessary, and they can play Caruso next to Rajon Rondo. They have other shooters they can kind of plug in there. They do have Danny Green, right? So you have all these kind of options to fill in for what Bradley does. And the other thing to kind of, Howard, we don't really know about, but even if Howard's out, if you force the Lakers to go small, what that means is you're getting Anthony Davis at the 5. And that's not a win. That's not a win if you're forcing the Lakers to play Anthony Davis at the 5. So while I do think that losing Bradley hurts, I do think the Lakers are pretty well positioned to kind of cover for it. And while I think that having to play a rotation of JaVale McGee and Anthony Davis at the 5 when Davis doesn't want to play 5 is a hindrance against the Rockets, I think it's less so. It's not to say I don't think Houston can beat the Lakers, because just like they can go on a cold streak, they're overdue for a ridiculous hot streak in the playoffs. Just one time, get hot. But I do think that there's a lot of challenges still that present to. I think if the Rockets are going to beat the Lakers, it's going to have to take just an unreal shooting performance from the role players.
Yeah, definitely, and I think I'm gonna have to go with Matt on this one. And me personally, being a Rockets fan, as much as I hope that Harden and Russ can kind of take that and take it to the finals, just in terms of depth, I definitely see Lakers and Bucks meeting in the finals. And to be honest, I don't know who's gonna take that one, and that's just depending on what we're going to be seeing in terms of the restart. That's just something that time's going to tell for me. But I guess personally, I would really like to see Giannis and the Bucks kind of take it home. But really excited to see what happens in the playoffs and kind of see what the restart consists of.
Just a little, just a little thought here. We saw in the regular season, we had a little beef between Giannis and Harden. How great would it be to see James Harden and Giannis battle in the finals? I feel like that that would be something to watch for. I think that would really bring the ratings up. I mean, I'm not saying that they should rig the league. I'm just saying, if that happened, it would be something to watch, because you don't see a lot of rivals like this that often. We saw Giannis throw some jabs at Harden during the All-Star weekend, talking about I want someone that passes the ball during the All-Star draft. But I think it'll be kind of cool to watch if Giannis and Harden make it to the finals together.
Yeah, I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think that's a precarious position, I think, for Rockets fans, because I think losing to Giannis in the finals might be like the one that might break them worse than even a 3-month-long quarantine can.
Yeah, that would be amazing to watch. So, yeah, I mean, that kind of sums up today's episode. I just want to thank you for coming on and, I know you probably have a really tight schedule and, just taking the time out of your day to come on our show. We really appreciate it. And, hopefully, we can, have a part 2 of this someday. And just want to thank you. Thank you so much for coming on, and we really appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I enjoyed it.
Thanks so much. Thank you, Matt. Thank you so much. All right, so that kind of sums up today's episode. Now that we're at the end of the episode, we finally get to announce our winner for the $25 Amazon gift card giveaway. Or something you'd like to say the winner for that?
Yes, sir. So the winner for our first giveaway is going to be Ursh Moment. Ursh, we are going to be DMing you with the gift card code. So we just wanted to say congratulations for winning the giveaway. Hopefully in the future we're going to be having some more giveaways, so be on the lookout for that. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it for today. Again, like we mentioned before, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our Twitch. Follow us on Twitter, and hopefully we're going to be having some more really cool guests coming up in the future. So just, we really wanted to thank you guys for being here. We had some great questions in the comments today, and then, we had a really great guest with Matt. And again, we'd like to thank him for hopping on with us, and just really excited to see what the future brings for us. So you wanted to add anything?
No, you kind of summed it up. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we got another great episode coming up next week. We'll release the guests for that early next week, and thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.